All right. Welcome to the new project. It's going to be starring me and my boy Jack here. If any of you ever caught any of the Minnesota Culture podcasts that I'm on with a few other people, and Jack uh, has been a guest star, but on lighter topics. This is going to deal on heavier things. No, we want to edit that out, don't we?
Yeah, well, let's just edit that out. Just
Yeah.
just just start with this the new project.
Right.
Call it lowering the bar. What are we gonna we're
We can
gonna
clip
call
that.
it lower.
Don't worry.
Yeah. I'm not really worried about it.
All right. Welcome to the new project. Oh fuck! Now I have to do a whole new intro.
I'm killing it.
I
I have a couple friends that make music. I'm pretty sure I could get somebody to make music for it.
Nice. Well, welcome to the new project. I'm your boy Kyle. This is Jack. We started a new project to talk about the things that are going on because we don't really align with the what do we say the top parties, the bigger.
I would
parties.
say I don't align with anybody at this point. I look at things, I see how ridiculous they are, and then I play the blame game.
Right. I'm with you on that.
So it's been challenging. Yeah.
Right. Jack's more of a let's fix it. I'm more of a let's get rid of them type of person. And today we're going to talk about some things. The 1776 project might get into some other stuff, but these will be short episodes, condensed, just general information about things that are going on, what people are talking about. You see these things trending on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're at. You know what you're doing. You're more the people that are listening and not the people we're really aiming for. We're talking about the people who are sharing posts on comparisons on Trump being American and Biden being a goddamn, I don't know.
Biden is what are you talking about? Biden is a communist lizard, brother.
Jesus Christ.
For legal reasons, that is not true. I am being sarcastic, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
But so Kyle, I think we should call this. I think I got a name for this. I'm good with it. I like lowering the bar because I feel like that's what the entire Biden administration is going to be. It's just going to be, like hopping over the bar that the prior administration set. I think this is another reason why Barack Obama was seen as like this god president by the Democrats, and
that's what they always.
After Bush, it was really easy. After Trump, it's also going to be really easy to make people think, "Oh my God, I'm competent because I have basic comprehension." Although for Biden, it might be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, because the people are a little more up in arms about saving their America.
What America? America is not. The first thing I want to say about this entire topic,
right?
And I think it's worth just mentioning this before I get into anything. America is an idea, okay? America is not a thing. It is an idea. It is an idea that's on a piece of paper. Yeah, maybe that's legal documents, but when it's all broken down, America is an idea. Nobody owns it. Nobody, people subscribe to its parts, but we all culturally and collectively agree to follow those laws. So America is more than anything else an idea. And I just want to make sure everybody's on board with that before we jump into any major topics.
Well, I'm with you on that. People, you have to understand that this land that people have come to fucking, I don't even know what anymore, dude. I hate this place, to be honest with you. I hate it here, and there's really nowhere else to go because it's really all the fucking same, to be honest with you.
That's probably because nationalism, fascism, and just generally awful things are on the rise. It has a lot to do. Why is that? I mean, here's the problem. We have people in this country, and in generally every country, there's just a belief in national sovereignty and the concept of, sovereignty as a nation and superiority as a nation, both militarily, ideologically, whatever you want to call it. In the United States, we have this in spades. And it's always the same people. It's always the right wing, typically, or you could even call it the centrist.
Right.
Centrist to right. They always go out and they tend to put out this, and they do the same thing as every other person on the every person on the left will get called out for virtue signaling, but it's the same shit. Like
Yeah.
if you go out and you're on Facebook and you're like, can this soldier get one like or a prayer or an amen? Like that's the same shit as like that is virtue signaling by definition. So everybody virtue signals.
Like this post or else baby will get aborted. Fuck you.
No. Whatever will we do? If that person can't have their, can't have their basic human health care.
Right.
That's let's all right, we're way off.
Right.
Let's start with something that came out relatively recently. Now, prior to the last day of the Trump administration, which was January 19th, PDF was released. And essentially, it was called the President's Advisory 1776 Commission. Anyone that understands American history, I teach it myself. My name is, Jack. I teach high school history. This is my job. This is what I do for a living. So, of course, I'm going to pay a little bit closer attention to it. I looked through it. It's about 45 pages. I can't begin to tell you some of the things that are in this because it is monstrous.
This? Start there. Who wrote this? What? Yeah.
It ain't historians. Let me double check on who wrote this because I think it was just a commission. So that makes it. It could be anybody from the PragerU people to. It could be anything. I just want to make sure I got it exactly right.
Well, if it's PragerU, it's all facts.
Oh yeah, 100%. So let's see.
Pulled up too.
18 members, conservative activists, established in September 2020 to support what Trump called patriotic education. And this is just me reading the Wikipedia page, but I figure 18. That I just want to see a little bit more about this. But it's called pseudo history. I kind of want to see who wrote this. Of course, the New York Times wrote about it, but
I love how it says, read our essays, get to know the work and voices of the 1776 United Scholars and the Achievers. And
that could be a potentially different one because there is a black one
that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, those are actually good.
Okay.
Some of them are pretty good. Now, here's some of my favorite stuff that's in it. Now, the 1776 project goes over lots of different things. It's basically a guide on how to, quote, teach American history properly. And it goes over several different points. Here's some of them. It starts with introduction, the meaning of the Declaration. And here's my favorite. The fourth chapter or the fourth part of this is challenges to America's principles. Now, I want you to hear me out closely on this because it's ridiculous. Okay, they start out with slavery, which they completely botch. Every part of that is really bad, and I'm going to go over why. Progressivism. They talk about progressivism as if it's a bad thing. I will go over that in a little bit of detail. They talk about fascism, communism, racism, and then identity politics. So all of those things are in there. And then they say the task of national renewal, which is the next part. My favorite part is teaching America and the role of the family. Reverence for the laws. It is mind-numbingly stupid. So to start out, the first thing you need to understand if we're going to ever talk about this is that Donald Trump's policy upon his running for election in 2016, or not even 2016, in 2020. 2016, he was just getting elected. 2020, his re-election campaign his educational policy really hinged on the concept of what was called American exceptionalism.
Yes.
So that concept, to put succinctly, is the idea that everything that America did, whatever struggles that it did, was overall for the common good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So like the Native Americans, Manifest Destiny, Japanese internment, and the list goes on and on and on. We committed genocide. So it's like,
right,
you start there and then you kind of go from there.
Twice we committed genocide.
Generally speaking, it just kind of breezes over the hard parts. And it says that everything that America did is important because America is an exceptional nation, we shouldn't be held to the same standards as other nations, because what we are is a nation of freedom and patriotism and laws, and we are the shining light by which every other nation will be guided.
Hmm.
And to teach that, to me, is antithetical to the concept of academics. So, Kyle, let me start by asking you this. Kyle, when you were taught different things, let's talk about this coming up right now. Black History Month.
Yeah.
Name the people that you hear about. Name the stories and the narratives that you're taught when that happens.
Well, you get the Martin Luther King, and you get the "I Have a Dream" speech.
Mm-hmm.
You get the dulled down version of the march. You get the dulled down version of the speech. Then you get Harriet Tubman and her Underground Railroad, and then you get Rosa Parks and how she kicked off the movement with her actions, and then you get let's see, who else do you get?
Don't forget about Peanut Man, brother.
Oh yeah, then you get Carver and his 50,000 ways of how you could use a peanut, and then you get a little bit about slavery in the nicest way possible, and then the month's over. So you get a total of 4 worksheets, and none of them teach you exactly what happened and what was going on and why it was going on.
And as a black man, how do you feel that how did you feel represented as a man of color in America, the way that history is taught in American schools, at least in our state?
To be honest, no, I never really felt connected to Black history until I did my own research. Schools, public schools, I don't know if it's to blame the teacher at the time or the school system and what they were allowed to teach or what they thought they could and couldn't teach, depending on the grade. And then, like, speaking in high school, you basically get, hey, we used to say only whites could eat here, and we got a little angry, and then we desegregated schools, and everything was happy again. They did not teach you about the overwhelming amount of legislation and laws put in place that crippled the Black economy. They never teach you about the horrific events of Black Wall Street and Rosewood and other places. Things I learned this year about how the Black settlement in Central Park was destroyed by public domain, and other things, and other settlements and other historic events that took place that would truly represent what it is to be called Black history. The forming of the Black Panther Party, because there's, public schools are scared to touch on that. So like, I don't know what it was like in the South with schools like popular, mostly Black schools, but I can only speak to where I was, which was about 50-50, but we got the dumbed down version of history. So no, did I ever feel connected to the history taught in public school? No, I just knew it was racism bad, now we're good.
And I feel like that is the narrative that virtually every textbook talks about. And that is incredibly frustrating as a person that's looked through this stuff through, I've read books, I've read articles, you name it, I've probably seen it or heard of it when it comes to this stuff. And one of the things that really bothers me when it comes to civil rights is that it's viewed through the lens of, okay, this fixed the problem, it's not there anymore.
Right.
And I think education as a whole in this country, first of all, it goes state to state.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could go to Texas and get a totally different education than you would in a place like Connecticut or New Jersey or California or Michigan or Kansas.
Right.
It goes place to place. The problem is that one of the biggest educational fights that has ever happened is over the teaching of history in American schools, particularly in the post-Civil War period.
Right.
Because let's think about it. If you're bringing people back from the South in these states, let's say they're literally a bunch of traders. And I'm not going to put that lightly. I'm not going to put it any other way. They're traitors.
Yeah.
They left the country in the interest of their, and they could put it however they want. They could put it states' rights. They could put it economics. They could put it one way. They could put it any way they want. But the bottom line under all of those things, the states' rights to do what? The economics that were dependent on the usage of what? The trade rights dependent on the usage of what? It's all the same thing. It, no matter how much you want to say it's not about slavery, you could put your euphemisms in there. You can play the semantics game. It was about slavery. There's no other way of putting it. So the first thing we need to do is address that problem. Second thing we need to do is we need to stop whitewashing the people that were involved in the civil rights movement. For instance, there's always this narrative of Martin Luther King good, Malcolm X mean,
right,
Black Panthers crazy. And there's no nuance to it. The Black Panthers armed themselves for a reason. The Black Panthers also adopted a Maoist ideology, and they were also really about feeding kids breakfast in the morning in impoverished schools. Malcolm X got so pissed off by the way that blacks were treated that, of course, he would have maybe appealed more to a violent ideology. However, I don't think that anybody listening here would be willing to say that if you get punched in the face enough, maybe you should go get brass knuckles is an unreasonable idea. That's not an unreasonable idea.
Not at all.
So we look through the time period. It's just like, I don't think racism has been solved. I don't think fascism has been solved. We have this dogmatic ideology about like, okay, in America, racism is bad. Okay, go tell that to 80% of the people on Facebook. Go tell that to all of your aunts, uncles, grandparents, and some of you, your parents.
Yeah.
Kyle, we've had plenty of discussions about this.
Right.
So where's the line? Let me ask you that. Where is the line for you when somebody goes that knows you or even doesn't know you, when you're on Facebook and you see it, you're like, okay, that's racist. Now, sometimes you're going to be like, okay, F that person.
Right.
Other times you're going to be like, okay, this person needs to be smacked down. What's your line?
There's no longer a line. In my book, it's all will be dealt with accordingly, regardless of how little or how big it is, how open or how closed off your mind, or no, not your mind, how openly racist you are to how unknowingly racist you are. Everyone is getting the same treatment, because I'm tired of, oh, well, she said this and it's not really, it's a lack of education. And then there's people who clearly know what they're doing is openly negative and bigoted. We're too far into this. We're too far along into the future, and it's too much in your face, too much on the news. There's too much being taught and brought up for anyone to have fucking ignorance around the situation. If you're denying it, whatever it is you're saying, if you're going to deny what people are doing now, and what I find to be pussy politics, is it's basically like they're like Trump's ideology and the people that came along. They're like, listen, this isn't racist as long as you say it isn't, as long as you don't acknowledge it being racist. We just want to be Americans. We want you to get rid of your identity. We want you to stop thinking and acknowledging the fact that you're black. Stop acknowledging the past, and we can all get along the way we want you to get along. And I'm not gonna sit down and do the whole I bleed red for this country thing that other pretty much white Americans do. And I know there's black people and there's Hispanic people who believe in this ideology, but it's always somebody with a really bad haircut who grew up in a white neighborhood and never faced any real struggle or any of the black experience. I'm not saying, you woke up every day in the hood and somebody called you the N-word, or you got pulled over and the cops harassed you every day type of, it's not like that, of course, but it's It's like you didn't have to live. If you didn't live through it to experience it, to feel it, you can't negate it. And I'm tired of people just saying it isn't a real thing. And then, or just being like, listen, you guys commit half the crime. So is it justified that, you know, your people are subjected to this? And my argument back to them is, well, you guys commit all of the school shootings. Should we start beating up or start harassing the lonely white kid who shoots up the school? Or should we start fucking like where what I don't understand that. So that's what I'm saying is I don't understand their logic. Like their logic makes no sense as to where you want me to just drop it and go along with you, and like you're not picking up what it is that is going on.
And
Like
this
so
is one of those things. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So there is no more line for me. There's no more line. Everyone gets the same treatment, whether it's small or big.
I agree. And microaggressions are like one of those things that like everybody's like, oh my god, it's a microaggression. And listen, South Park, for its amazing comedy, has sometimes come out as quite a bit of a centrist point. And of late, I've started to realize that like a lot of their points are kind of shit.
Right.
Some of their stuff is really funny. I think their Jersey Shore episode, and I think they're still funny. But I think you can't take it beyond that. When they try to make the political commentary points at times, it comes off a little. It's like, why can't we just meet in the middle? There's certain things you can't meet in the middle on. Racism is one of them. In particular, race relations in America. Now, listen, South Park has done a lot of that. Do I think it's a bad show? I think it's been highly misinformed at points. I also think that there's an element of truth to certain things that they've said. Like what their racism is based on, like the racism you're going to hear at a bar, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, this person speaks like this. Oh, this person has rhythm. Oh, it's racist in a weird it's just there's a spectrum to it, and I hate saying that because it makes me sound shitty.
Mm-hmm.
But like I do think there's a spectrum to racism. I think there's people that don't know they're racist and are acting in like their good faith. And then I think there's people that are just openly. I'd rather have somebody that's openly racist than somebody that thinks they're not every single time.
Right.
Like if you're gonna be a racist, just say it with your chest, dude. At this point, just say it with your chest. There's no point. There's no point. I saw a video the other night. These guys surrounded this like I want to say he was a Hispanic dude, and him and his brother and his dad or something, his friend and his dad, and they just surround this guy, and they start calling him the N-word. And the dude's Hispanic, first of all, so like, way to go. You managed to just refer to everybody that doesn't look like you as the N-word. Great job. They go on and they go on and they go on and they talk shit and they talk shit. And then they go, put it on. Yeah. Send it on Facebook. Put it on the news. Okay. No problem, buddy. You asked for it. Like the next day, one of those people was like, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. He immediately deleted it. The problem is that like these people are stuck. And I don't know how to get them out of it because this is a really bad problem in America. We have reached the point of like, I don't know if education can fix it. Education can fix the next generation.
Yeah.
What do we do with the current one? Because some of them have become unabashed. And I don't know how other generations dealt with this because I feel like the amount of...
It was okay for them to be that way.
Yeah, I feel like and on top of that, it's also like the amount of publicity they can put to it. Like you can say that shit and everybody can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an element of like openness to it.
Right.
And I'm still trying to figure out like, how do I deal with this? Because this is still new. I understand it's like new. It's not new for like racism to exist, but it's definitely new for like the way that it exists in modern society. Like you could say things like "I believe in law and order," or versus like look, BLM is a terrorist organization, and they mean the same thing. They mean the same thing.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line. And we look at let's look at the Congress situation. The other day, a guy that I fight a lot with on Facebook, a lot, and I'm going to continue to fight with him because he's my little pet. And if you're hearing this, you're my pet. That's why you're still my friend. I don't delete you because then you get to claim, you censored me. You need your echo chamber. No, I'm not going to delete you. I want to see how stupid you are. So he goes, well, if BLM's getting nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, well, why don't we just nominate the Proud Boys?
He actually said that?
Yeah. Those two things are so fundamentally different. First of all, BLM is based on, I don't know, a real thing. That's a real problem. The Proud Boys are based on dudes that have tiny dicks. And Enrique, I want you to find me. My name is Jack. Dudes with tiny dicks that do not satisfy their wives, girlfriends, or any woman they've ever been with. That feel the need to feel like a big, strong man. That's what the Proud Boys are. They bring nothing to society, and they use this macho attitude and this testosterone, classic gender role bullshit. Who cares? You bring nothing to society. All you do is wave your flag. Nobody cares.
Not at all. Didn't one of them get killed in like Seattle or some shit?
What a shame.
All that gun toting and bulletproof vest wearing, and you still got shot down.
The reason that dudes like that even have gangs like that is because they're afraid. This is the same shit as why kids join white supremacist groups. If you've ever seen American History X, it's the same energy. It's the exact same thing. There's no difference.
And I want people to know there's a dysfunction within the Proud Boys. They're not what they claim to be. They're not as sound as they show themselves, because the actual racist, openly racist neo-Nazi motherfuckers that started the Proud Boys and were originally part of the Proud Boys have come out and called Enrique all types of spics and wetback comments, and he doesn't really lead us and all that other shit. So there's division within that own group. They're just a bunch of fucking morons with guns. And eventually, and I hope to God, they get put on an FBI watch list and they all get murdered. I don't want them arrested. I don't want my tax dollars going to paying for racist criminals to live in jail. I want them murdered.
I don't know, man. I think that sometimes prison justice is the best kind of justice.
What do you mean? Like really mean black guys raping them?
I wouldn't say raping. I would say prison justice. I would say let them know what they're there for. Let them know what they're about. The problem is that there's a pretty high Nazi population.
Yeah.
Like white dudes tend to be like, I'm going to carve the Nazi swastika into my forehead and everybody will be cool with it.
But Enrique, you're not going to be saved in prison.
I don't think he's going to prison, brother. I truly don't. The problem with what happened at the Capitol, and I don't know how true this is. I could be 100% wrong. I could look back at this and be like, Jack, that's a bad take, brother. But the domestic terrorism laws aren't that tangible in the United States. They're not that well written. They're not that strong. There's mostly like foreign terror laws that are like, let's just throw them in Guantanamo Bay. There's no interrogation process. There's no limits to what we can do to them. Domestic terrorists, different.
Because they knew when they wrote down the domestic terrorism laws.
They were looking for brown people, brother.
What'd you say?
They were looking for brown people.
And then found out the domestic terrorists aren't brown.
Yeah. We're living shit. We're living in a world that runs on extremes. Now listen, I am one of the people that people would consider a far leftist, whatever you want to call me. I'm also a reasonable person. I like to think I'm a personable person. I teach children. I don't necessarily think that like we should start the revolution and like start guillotining people, but
That's where I'm at.
I think there is a necessity for a cultural revolution in the United States. 100%. I think that there's currently a cultural revolution happening. That's what the Proud Boys are representative of. There's like this concept that they're fighting back against what they feel is a threat to their existence. The concept of normal gender roles according to them, the concept of normal race roles according to them, the concept of like all of this stuff, Western civilization, it's all based on the fact that these dudes feel threatened, so they need to gang up and make people's lives hell and be loud as hell about it. That's what it's all about. So where do we go? Kyle, you're a dude that grew up down where I am also from. We are from I will just say that I am from the Jersey Shore. How's that?
Right.
Kyle is also a resident and a lifetime potentially resident of the Jersey Shore area. Kyle has seen every version of racism, whether it be minuscule or open. And when I say that, I mean even within his friends group, he's seen this.
Yes.
That's not a question. That is a fact. I've seen it happen. So here's my next question for you, Kyle. When was it that you were like, okay, now the line is here? Like I said before, like the line now, but when was it that you were like, okay,
you know what that line was?
I do know when that line was, but I think maybe our listeners, and I'm not giving names, and I'm not saying dates, and I'm not giving time frames, but Kyle, was there a moment that you were like, okay, I've been a little too lax with my boundaries, especially with regard to my race?
Right. There were instances in times where growing up, I never faced real open racism until I moved to until I started involving myself with a certain group of people in a certain town that was adjacent to where I was living. And the racism that was open wasn't like, you can't come around here. It was, no, you're cool, but this is who we are. And at first it was let me see what this really is about. Like, how does this work for you guys? Like, how are you willing to fly the rebel flag? How are you willing to use racial slurs in comedic ways to insult inanimate objects, like the phrase nigger rigging, and calling someone who they considered a dear friend by a random racial slur, and him being accepting of it. And at first my knowledge was limited of what, not so much, not to the N word, but with this other name, and I didn't know that was a slur until sometime after.
What word?
Beaner. I had never heard it. I had never heard it before. Like I said, where I came from, we didn't use those terms, and the white kids that were around us didn't use those terms. So it was odd to me. So after quite a bit of time and speaking with these people and drawing lines with certain folks that I didn't associate myself with, and I started to find the good people within the group, and I hung out with them. But then as I dove deeper into their life, I realized they came from a place where it's just like, okay, this is deeper than I ever knew it was. And after some time of keeping my distance and never involving them into my personal life outside of the relationship we had, because of these things, I don't want to say my friendship and my what's the word, acquaintances amongst these people were a social experiment 100%, but for some of the part it was, because as I gained knowledge through my own studies and just my own witnessing of events, I started to put together the pieces of the puzzle that there really are people in this world that live in a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And this bubble is painted inside and out so they can't see the rest of the world.
1,000%.
And it blew my mind for so long, because the longer I stayed, like I said, the more I saw. And eventually, the circle that I was in started to become infringed upon on other outside influences as they began to have other relationships with other people. And when I could what I considered people to be close friends, because I had never had an issue with them, um from with racial issues or just racial insensitivities, then it started to occur because outside influences came along. And one time, a situation occurred, and I thought I drew the line there, because I'm a type of person. I used to be the type of person to believe in re-education or just education, because some people don't come from where I come from, and people don't come where others come from. You know what I mean? There's perspectives in the world. There's different. Everyone leads a different life, and I'm like, all right, you know what? If I stay and I teach this person or people that what they believe to be okay isn't okay, then there's maybe some trickle down effect throughout their personal life. And one day they may have children, and or whatever the case may be. But then I started to realize that there are people in this world you can't educate, and there's people in this world you cannot change. And those people that you cannot change, when they form bonds with others like them, from a race standpoint, other white people, um, and me being African American, uh, when these things occur, when these instances occur where I'm offended by something that is racially insensitive, they're not going to understand it, because they refuse to understand it. They refuse to learn. And at that point, when I realized, after spending a decade around some people and them not being able to, them thinking it's something that they could just let slide, I realized, oh,
Maybe it's time to take a step back. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, like I got to take a step back, because I thought I had been open enough. I thought I had been truthful enough with these people, because they had agreed with me. Then they stood on some of the same grounds that I stood on. And but when it came time to put those beliefs into action and put your money where your mouth is, pretty much, it couldn't be done.
So let me ask you this then. What role do you think that tokenism has played in your friendship with some of the people that you know? In other words, do you think that you are the one black friend that, like, how many, like, do you feel as though you are the one black friend that certain people have? Like, do you think that they're the ones that they might throw your name out, or they might point to you as the person that is like, oh my God, I'm not a racist because I am friends with this person? And how would you feel about that if they were doing that?
Those jokes, that point has never been made in a serious way to me amongst those people. I'll give them that.
I wouldn't even call it just those people. I would just call it anyone that you know. Do you feel as though you've ever been used in that context.
No, because I never let the, well, let's just call it what it is. I never let the Perry effect set in.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and for that, what I mean is, the one black guy who hung out with all the white kids who adopted their culture, their way of life, and just forgot that I was not the same. Forgot there was a history and just allowed myself to be one of them. Which, at the end of the day, when you're friends, you just want to be one of the boys. But at the end of the day, when it's that different, you really can't be just one of the boys. We could be cool as fucking cucumbers or whatever the fuck it is you want to call it, but there's going to come a time, and I always knew this in the back of my head, there was going to come a time where the lines in the sand would have to be drawn and it would go out that way. So I never let them play me that close.
And I guess I hope, as one of the people that was part of that circle,
Right.
and might still remain to be part of that circle, that I have not done that. But I do not ever listen, dude. I was a shitty person for a long time, and one of the things that I learned from my job, one of the things that I learned from moving out of my hometown and the bubble that you referred to, is that people are fundamentally, like, they need to be respected.
Right.
And I didn't have a real glimpse into racism until I started working in an inner city school. I really didn't. I was a sheltered white kid. I went to college. I even thought stupid things then. The older I got, the more children that I taught that were people of color, or maybe of different sexual orientations or nationalities or religions, the more I realized that, like, everybody has something to offer, and the more I realized that everybody has different experiences, I felt like the more willing and open-minded that I was, particularly surrounding the concept of race. And here's why. The first time I experienced race, like true racism, the first time I saw it and I was like, yo, white privilege is real. I took my kids to a place called Medieval Times in a place called Lyndhurst, New Jersey, not far from where I live currently. And I taught at a school where my kids wore uniforms. I taught a predominantly African American and Hispanic American, Latin American, whatever you want to call it. I primarily taught people of color.
Right.
My kids were told before they got there, I was like, you are standing in a perfect line. You are not to do this. You are not to do that. You are not to give anybody any inclination that you are anything other than our students, and you are there to learn. And I felt like that was a reasonable thing to say to children. And I still do. Meanwhile, we have our kids lined up. They're fucking stoic. They are stoic. They are in perfect lines. They are perfectly behaved. They're standing their hands at their sides, waiting to just go in and enjoy the show.
Mm-hmm.
So a field trip that was next to us, from all the kids were white.
Right.
I'm just going to say it. All the kids were white. They start looking at my students, and one of the parents physically holds back one of the kids, looking at my kids. And I go, do you think they're criminals or something? Like, what do you think? Like, why are you assuming that my kids are bad? They're standing in a perfect line, all focused on me, and you're being a piece of shit. So that moment for me was like, and I know this was a later date in my life, but I had understood the concept of white privilege. I had understood the concept of, racial, issues in America. But that was the first time I ever saw a practical application of it. And I was just like, these kids they're assuming that my kids are criminals and scum and drug dealers, and they're literally seventh graders that live in, just happen to be of color. And it really frustrated me.
Right.
And I took a long look at myself in the mirror and I was like, what can I do? So going forward, I think race in America, you could call it identity politics, you can call it whatever you want. But the bottom line is that race will continue to be a major issue in America, and you can't just ignore it. You can't be the person that's like, we're all part of the same race, the human race. No, dude, like, anytime somebody says that, listen to me. People, if you're listening, if anybody says we're all part of the same race, just before they finish that sentence, just say the Daytona 500. Okay? Please. The Kentucky Derby. The 1998 race between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire. Any of those races is acceptable.
MVP
because,
race?
Yeah. Like, we don't need that. We really don't. And then there's the Morgan Freeman argument. I have a person that I know that suggested teaching Black History Month by showing a 4-minute Morgan Freeman video about how Black History Month isn't necessary or is stupid. While I generally agree with the concept that Black History Month is a bad idea for different reasons,
right?
I think his purpose in showing it is like, well, like we're all people. Like, are we though? Do we have the same experiences? Like, do we have the same culture? Are you willing to respect that culture, acknowledge that culture, bring that culture to light? No? Then yeah, Black History Month is necessary then. But it doesn't need to be necessary in the way that you think it needs to be necessary, because you're an ignorant asshole. I don't see color. What do you do at a stoplight then? Shut your mouth. It's one of my least... I could go off on this for days, but I think this is as good a place as any. I know Kyle has a second podcast that he needs to get to. So, Kyle, I'm looking forward to the Lowering the Bar podcast being a significant success and a conversation that includes people of all colors, races, creeds, religions. I just want to have a talk, and I think we all should too.
Absolutely, man. It's going to be super interesting. It's going to be a great thing that we're doing here. We will hopefully be able to get people with not only similar standpoints, but also those on the complete opposite end to have a conversation.
100%. I want the opposite side.
And this is never going to be a platform to shit on you in the sense that, you know, we're going to make you feel stupid, but in the sense to garner a better, I guess, just why do you stand where you stand, and can you back up your stance with true information and facts other than, hey, they commit half the crime. I really want to have these conversations, and I want this to be an open platform. Don't be scared, is what I'm saying. If you can get on Facebook and talk that shit amongst the people who you know who will agree with you, grow a set and talk to the people who don't agree with you. You know, you're a proud boy. Show me how proud you are, I guess. But with that said, I do have to end it here. So we'll be back week to week, right?
Yep.
Week to week with these conversations. They may be a half hour, they may be a little bit longer. So we will dive into, I guess, a little bit more of the 1776.
We can talk about whatever it is that you want. We're gonna go, and if the people want, they can suggest things. We're gonna get a page started, but
yeah,
we'll go from there. Well, let's start here. I felt like this was a good conversation. I think that's what this is all about, is just having the tough conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, man. Well, we'll be back next week, and we'll see you then.
See you then, Kat.